Good morning, everyone. Good evening, wherever you're located in the world. Welcome to this panel on diversity and inclusion in finance. My name is Sébastien Betarmier. I'm an associate professor of finance at the Desautel Faculty of Management at McGill University. I'm the faculty director of the MIPC. It's a great pleasure to have this first panel on diversity and inclusion in finance. It's an important topic. It is especially important this year for us, as the theme of this year's case is how finance can address the rise of social inequalities. I want to thank Linda, Wagner, and Jasbir for taking the time to be here with us today. Our moderator today will be Tanya Kuo. Tanya is the co-executive director of MIPC. Tanya is currently completing her Bachelor of Commerce at McGill University, majoring in finance and in mathematics. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. It is my absolute pleasure to be welcoming you all to MIPC's very first panel on diversity and inclusion in the financial industry. And this topic is, of course, one that never ceases to be relevant, as Professor mentioned. However, now more than ever, with the rise of protectionist tendencies we're observing around the world and the impact that the COVID-19 crisis has had and is still having on historically disadvantaged groups, especially when it comes to employment, it is clear that long overdue, tangible, and durable systemic change is needed. And individuals globally are fighting for it, as we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic, joining forces to create a better, more equal world. And this is, of course, also spreading to the financial industry. Now, as a young Black woman interested in a career in algorithmic trading, I personally grew up thinking that I didn't really belong on a trading floor because, quite frankly, I didn't see anyone that looked like me. I've had to overcome a number of limiting beliefs, and one of the ways that I did it was through having conversations with people who had been in my seat before. And I am joined today by a group of remarkable professionals who embody our mission and values incredibly well. Linda, Jasbir, and Wagner, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this discussion. Linda Ghordaf, joining us from Montreal, is a partner for KPMG's Financial Risk Management Division. Jasbir Nizar, currently located in London, is the head of business development at Lombard Odier. And Wagner Dada, who's in Toronto at the moment, is a senior portfolio manager at CPP Investments. And these inspiring professionals all come from different backgrounds. They operate in very different fields and industries. And throughout our conversation, we'll have the chance to hear each of their unique perspectives. So Linda, Jasbir, and Wagner, thank you so much again for being here today. And without further ado, let me kick it off actually by just asking this question. Students are always eager to learn from the experiences of successful people like yourselves. And right now, as I said before, we have students from all around the world, 18 different countries, 56 universities across the world, and they all look up to people like you. And so just as a way of introduction, could you please tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what made you choose the career path that you chose? And maybe we can start with you, Linda.
Okay, thank you, Tanya, and thank you for having me with you today. It's really a pleasure. So my name is Linda Ghordaf. I'm a partner within the financial risk management at KPMG. I've been a partner for the last 3 years now. And I was born and raised in Morocco, and I did complete my bachelor degree there. And I did came here to Canada 15 years ago to do a master degree, and I was hired first by l'Autorité des marchés financiers, so the local regulator. And this job did really open a lot of doors for me later. And actually, my interest in finance, it was really early for me. It was in Morocco, so the diversity was not a question, and I didn't have that barrier then. So it's a barrier that did came afterwards when I came to Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, all of you identify as visible minorities, and as such, did you ever feel hesitant to pursue a career in finance because of the stigma surrounding your community? And if so, how did you overcome your reservations? Maybe we can start with you, Wagner, this time.
So thank you, Tanya. So I mean, my within the industry, I always came in with just the approach that I wanted to just keep my head down and just let my performance speak for itself. I didn't really. I don't think anybody wants to be special or held out as the token Black person or the token visible minority. And so for me, that was always a concern. I wanted to just not talk about race at all, not talk about being a visible minority, and just blend in and be no different from any of my peers.
Right.
One of the people I always look forward to in the industry, who is actually the first Black African CEO of a FTSE 100 company, and he always says something like, you don't go into a room asking if people are right or left-handed. And so I always, and I still look forward to a world where sort of away from your visible minority characteristics, so whatever segment it is you're from within the population really is not relevant. What should be relevant is, can you do the job? Are you the best person for your job? And so for me, it was always a concern, and it continues to be a concern. And my solution personally was to just really keep my head down and not even raise it at all. I think it's great that we've had some changes this year that really highlighted just how important it is to raise the subject, to talk about it, and also just realizing that if people like myself don't speak up, then things will not change. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what about you, Jasbir? Have you ever had any doubts going into the financial industry?
Doubts? No, I kind of stumbled into it. It was, I think it's crazy because I think when you're a graduate, you feel like you need to have this purpose, be mission minded. You need to have your career mapped out ahead. It's actually not like that. Looking back, I think a lot of us stumble into roles and you kind of figure it out as you go along. So there's no such thing as this ideal career path. And I think what you have to do is take the opportunities that are presented to you. So that would be my one piece of advice, is just go for it. And then I think that, once you land there, whatever role you land in, there is this constant battle on a daily basis. There'll be times where you get frustrated, you get angry, there's social injustice or perceived or real bias, discrimination, and you want to go home and kick the cat or the dog or, go for a run. I'm not advocating
for animal violence.
So let's just go. I'm not, just for that.
The run is,
exactly. So look, I think it's a constant challenge. And I think that, you have to constantly do is just recenter yourself and say, what's the long game? And, am I prepared to fight that fight? Go through the struggle. And for me, it's the challenge has always been finding the reason to stay as opposed to the 10 reasons to just quit. And the reason to stay is, I love working with the people that I work with, and you build really strong connections. They're bright, they're challenging, they're individuals. And so I think that has always been a motivating factor. And for 20 years, whether I've been at RBS or Citi and now Lombard Odier, I think all of these organizations want to attract the top talent.
Absolutely.
And I think that is, and that piece, this is going to sound like a cliche, but talent does not discriminate. And so that's what keeps me motivated and inspired to continue, as opposed to hesitating about, taking steps forward.
Right. And just to kind of bounce off of something that you just mentioned, you said something very interesting about stumbling in your career in finance, which is quite interesting. And, oftentimes I think when you're a visible minority, you're kind of expected to be doing a lot more work, right? To be able to have access to the same opportunities. And so oftentimes we feel like we don't have a lot of room for error. Yet you're the example that you can still kind of go around, take some time to figure things out and stumble across great opportunities and be very accomplished. And so can you talk a little bit more about that, about, the path that led you to your career and kind of, some messages that you might have for our students joining us right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and be concise as possible because I can talk a lot. Look, I did law, and then I studied employee relations, and then I went to join a very conservative Scottish bank. Then I went to an American investment bank, and then I landed in asset management. And I think that it's what I have always believed is, we will make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But, it is the one quality that I look for people in my previous role as head of HR is bravery. And I think that skill set is unique. And I think people of color, women, my goodness, I think we're taught to be brave from day one because you have to overcome so much. And I think bravery coupled with the courage to make mistakes, learn, pick yourself up and just keep going is something that we just all have to do. So for me, I think that stumbling is fine. We will all find our feet. But I think having the courage to pick yourself back up and just keep going is something that takes a lot of strength.
Absolutely. Okay. And so what about you, Linda?
So it's really very interesting to hear Wagner and Jasbir. We have, I think, same experiences. And I would like to build on what I did here. So I did hear you, Wagner, saying, for example, that you did try to be blended in the try to be transparent in the environment and just let your performance speak for itself. And I did hear from you, Jasbir, for example, that talent does not discriminate, and those two was really part of my career. So when I did at the beginning of my career, I just tried to be like everyone else, and I tried to be so perfect and work hard because I thought, and I did see that talent was not discriminating, and I thought that it was working until I did start seeing those barriers coming. And those barriers, you discover them, like Jasbir said, it's not it's not a one shot. Like you have a path, and during that path you find barriers, and then you find ways to overcome those barriers. So for me, for example, at the beginning of the career, I did see a lot of diversity and a lot of women, and it was all good and but when as I started to try to get to more management positions, executive positions, I did see less diversity, less women, and it was so obvious when I did when I was a candidate for the partnership. This did really hit me because the percentage of women partner in Big Four, it's not that much, especially in the finance sector. It's like it goes from 50% in the other levels, women and men, and you go to the partnership and it drops to 20% for women. So it's really it's there, and so I did accumulate those barriers. First of all, I was in Morocco, so there was no question about diversity. I did come to Canada, and then diversity, and then finance, less women in finance, and then after that, when I wanted to have kids, now the question came really at the same time as I was a candidate for partnership. So do they need really to make a choice, or can I do it all? And I didn't, Tanya, I didn't see a lot of references for me, like people like me connect to and to say, okay, yeah, it's possible. It was there, but few. So we have those dots, but we try to, and I agree with Wagner and Jasbir. Seriously, talent and the performance, it speaks for itself. The problem is for a lot, and I see it. A lot of people like us, they put themselves in there a lot of pressure to be perfect because we have all that. We did see it working, so we all try that we all play on. We use it a lot, so we put a lot of pressure on our. So I hope, Tanya, I did answer your question.
Yes, you did. You did it very well. Thank you so much for sharing some insights on that. And, one thing that I think is quite interesting actually about what all of you pretty much brought up is kind of that duality that exists between professional you and kind of yourself as a person that's multi-layered, that's a visible minority, maybe that's a woman, et cetera, et cetera. And it's almost like those two sides of you aren't compatible. It's almost like you cannot exist and be professional and be smart and be considered seriously, and also be, say, for example, a woman who wants to have kids, or a Black man who enjoys listening to music and dancing and partying and so on. And so, clearly there are some stereotypes there. There are some preconceived ideas that people have, which is why, many of you have felt like it was necessary to keep your head down for a very long time. But we're getting to a point where I feel like authenticity more and more is being celebrated. And so, given what we just discussed about the marginalizing culture that exists and some of the stereotypes that exist about your particular community, what are some initiatives that you've either implemented or been a part of in order to dismantle that marginalizing culture, either in your day-to-day jobs or in your community?
Yeah.
Maybe we can start with you, Wagner. Do you want to take it?
Yeah. So I actually follow up from the duality point you had made. It's really very much me. I remember my very first job in quant investing. I was in a global team, 25 people, and it was something like 60-70% PhDs. Respectfully, it seemed, strangely enough, it seemed like a requirement for that job was to be a little bit socially awkward. So picture the gig where they really take classes. And
right.
And so there was, I had my PhD from one of the, from a top university, and it was a very strange environment because I had to literally separate out my work person from my from who I am at home. I have, my first name is Wagner, which really after a composer, and I play multiple musical instruments. So yes, I like classical music, but just as much as I like classical music, I also like the hip hop R&B. So but then I did not want to confuse. I mean, however presumptuous that may be on my part, but I didn't want to confuse them. They'd seen me as just this geeky guy with really thick glasses.
That's for the glasses,
out, and I just didn't want to mix up that duality. So, just following up from that, what ended up happening was I was president of the society back in Cambridge, and I was plugged in and continued to mentor upcoming students who wanted to step into the industry. But at work, I just never embraced race. I just never identified with that. I was doing mentoring and sponsorship and explaining to undergrads who have interest to apply or work in finance, what they need to do, how they need to prepare for the Mail Crown, which is a big thing in the UK, which is the job application cycle. Just prepping them for even quant interviews, and also and then mentoring them, and that actually goes beyond just finance. They ended up being a much bigger movement in the legal community because there were just a lot more Black people in the legal community out in the UK and got better organized. But I was working with those partners there. But at work, I just really stuck to that duality. At work, stayed completely out of it. And since I moved to Canada, which is 5 years ago, I got involved with the it's called KPMG. That's the Association for Urban Finance Professionals. It's really it's called Urban Finance Professionals, but it's really for visible minorities within the finance community. And so I got involved with KPMG as a member, and what became very clear is a lot of immigrants arrive in Canada who struggle to break through the barrier, and they've got the PR, and when they arrive, they're told, yeah, you don't have Canadian experience. So I mentor those people, go through their resumes, advise them on which roles they have, but at work, I just totally stayed away from it until recently. Yeah.
Interesting. And what made you shift to being more involved and more hands-on at work?
Yeah. So I'll say it's really before this year, I realized it just hit me that, I looked up at the hierarchy and I realized in the past I could say, yeah, there are more senior Black people or more senior visible minorities who are not doing enough. And it just hit me that if I look up, who else can I point to? And there's not a lot of people I could point to. And it just occurred to me that if I don't step forward, and in fact, it's all of us in the chain, doesn't matter where we are. If we all don't step up, whatever segments we are, because it could be LGBTQ plus, it could be women in capital market. There are all these on our way of BIPOC, whichever segment we are, and wherever we are in that entire chain, we all have a role to play in educating our lives, messaging up what the issues are and pulling other people up and just breaking down any of those barriers which exist. So one was realizing there's nobody else, and if I don't get involved, it wouldn't change. The events of this year I'm talking about is the old George Floyd thing plus COVID, and just realizing also that it doesn't matter how successful I am, if society doesn't change, let's step away from work now. If society doesn't change and we all don't break down prejudices that exist within society, doesn't matter how successful that person I am. I could go out, be driving my car, get pulled over, and just get abused, the kind of George Floyd thing we saw. Because out there, no one cares what seniority you are in any organization. And so just realizing that even outside of work, I can do a little bit to just help make the society better, and I need to step up. I'll say those were really what hit me, and I just started embracing more of my identity and becoming more authentic. I should say, though, that CPP Investments has also been doing a lot of good things. We have an inclusion diversity, designated inclusion diversity expert. I know we'll talk about organizational actions later on, but the organization, I'll say, really started paying a lot more attention, and we have all these employee resource groups that have been great. So I hope that answers your question there, Tanya.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Linda, do you want to maybe talk about some of the initiatives that you've been a part of to really dismantle marginalizing culture, either in your community or in your company?
Yes, sure. So actually, right now, as a partner, I did try really to have in my team, I'm a proponent of giving equal opportunities for everyone, for sure. And my partner also, so we have that vision. And KPMG at the beginning, it's really very diverse environment. It's really an employer that have that in the values. So it's a very good environment to do it. So for me, it was more how to really bring those people, attract them, and bring them in the team. Our team is very, very diverse, but from like a more like the background where people come from different countries. But we had the issue between women and men, we were like just two women in a whole team of men, and I find myself often in rooms just like the only women. It happens a lot. So the last year, I'm really proud to say that I did hire several women to join our team. I was able to convince them to join that. Sometimes it's just also the job of consultants. It's sometimes like it can be seen as it's a commitment and like the time we spend there. But it's really, I was able to convince those women to join and to explain that the barriers they see, we can overcome them. So it was one of their concerns, like having family and being consulting and like overcoming those barriers in a very boys club environment. So that was, and I'm involved also in the Association of Women in Finance. That was really helpful for me as a person. It did really help me to have help when I did needed it, and support, and just like some good advice when it was time. And through the association, I'm able also myself to make some really to bring changes to the finance environment in Montreal. So and I'm also part of the PREMIA, it's the Association for Risk Management. So being involved in the associations, that helps a lot in shaping the environment in finance and influencing, and also being involved internally. So you need not to stay there and just wait for it to happen. We need to be proactive, and we need to make things move, and try to find, like, when you will be, if I put myself in your shoes, you will join friendly and sometimes less friendly environments. You need to find people who will believe in you, like sponsors, and you cannot wait for them to come to you. You need to go and talk to some people who can influence your career and who can help you overcome some barriers. So this is really, really important to do that.
Absolutely. And any advice maybe on how to connect with these people and go about finding these mentors?
Yeah, sure. So for sure, you will join the organizations. You will see that sometimes most of the organizations now, they have like a committee about diversity, and they have something happening, or committee about women. You can see how you can be involved. But at the same time, usually when you join a company, and you will see it through your career, you will have a mentor. It's usually your boss. You will have a coach. It could be internally or external to your organization. But a sponsor is really different. It's someone who is in a position who can influence. It's not your boss, and he can really promote your career, and he can help you when things get a little bit stuck because of a barrier. So you need to, through your relations, you need really to be aware of your environment. And I know that during COVID, all that, like, it's not easy because we don't meet in around the coffee, or like we don't have all that social informal connections in the workplace. So I think it will be a little bit hard for if you join during the COVID, but I think it's really an advice for later in your career. It doesn't need to be the first or the second year, but we need to have a coach, to have a sponsor, to have a mentor. It's good to surround yourself by people who believe in you and who can give you good advice, and who can help you go through, like, overcome all those barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jasbir, do you want to maybe take that question as well?
Sure. Look, I think that Wagner and Linda have summed it up, and so I don't want to duplicate what they've said, just for the sake of speaking. But the only thing that I would say, I think often as a woman, my husband is African American. I think he and I have these conversations sometimes during dinner, and we'll compare notes and talk about each other's days. But I think that having people that you can have these kinds of conversations with in a safe environment, to say, you know what, I experienced this. Have you experienced something similar? And just having that support network that you can share ideas with and say, okay, how did you overcome this? Should I approach this from a different angle? Or I'm struggling with this, is really, really beneficial. So I think that, for this audience, what I would say is encourage you all to develop a broader network and share those common experiences and learn from each other. Because I think that is huge and invaluable to say, you know what, I did this and I struggled with this. What works, what doesn't? That's the only thing that I would add, because I think otherwise, my fellow panelists just summed it up nicely.
Very well. And so kind of to move on to a topic that's really related to that, we just talked about some cultural, I guess, dimensions that can influence professionals in their day-to-day lives, whether, it's in their personal lives or in their professional lives, and recentering a bit our spectrum to a professional setting. This question is especially for you, Jasbir, since you led the recruitment division for Lombard Odier for quite some time. From a recruiter's perspective, given the increased awareness that there is on topics related to diversity and inclusion, what are some of the changes that you have made in your work and that you have implemented, or some of the programs that you've launched to better support minority groups in finance? And more specifically, if, for example, you've launched certain EDI strategies, did some of them not work? And if they didn't work, why? And what's been your learning and your growth process throughout addressing some of these concerns in recruitment?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's a really good question to ask, Tanya. So thank you for bringing it up, because in my long career of HR, I think the one thing that I would say is every single organization, and I alluded to this earlier, that I have worked for has been really, really focused on the client. Like every single organization in 20 years, it's about the client, the client, the client. And, you want to attract clients, you want to service clients. And so with that mindset, I think every single organization wants to hire the best person. And I genuinely believe that. It's unfortunate that there's systemic issues that sometimes get in the way, but I think you all have to know that at the heart of what an organization wants, they want to attract top talent. And so what I'm encouraged by is in 20 years in financial services is that all of the organizations that I've worked for, that's what they want to do. And so specifically, if I look back, whether it was at RBS or Citi and now at Lombard Odier, and specifically where I am now, things that we have done, we've launched internally like a women's leadership development program to promote more women, support emerging talent, looking at diverse slates, and a number of organizations do this. So I'm not just speaking for my firm, but I would take the liberty to also, I'm sure Wagner and Linda will say that their firms also support these initiatives around diverse slates. So for every 3 candidates, there are men. They want to see 1 candidate or 2 candidates that are women or from diverse backgrounds. Equally, so diverse slates, gender pay gap reporting, supporting initiatives from underrepresented schools, which might not be part of, the elite group of universities, but looking at financial inequalities as well, and how they might disproportionately impact women or people from different minorities, and say, look, we really want to do something for the community as well. And so I think that's really important. A lot of organizations nowadays do the data monitoring, gender pay gaps. A lot of them will have quotas. And I know that that's going to sound controversial for some people because it's a bit hit and miss. And I think as minorities, we, whether you're a woman or whether you're from BAME or whatever you call it, network, it's kind of, you always believe that, well, the best person for the job should get it. And I think we know that it's not always the most competent person in the room that has got that job. And so I think there's a mixed view on quotas at different levels, and I think some organizations will have them, some won't. But I think the one thing that I will say is in financial services, we love targets. So give us a target and a number to hit, we will hit it. And so I'm okay with quotas and saying we will need 20% of this and 20% of this, because what I have found in my experience is we'll hit those numbers if you give us those numbers to hit. So I think that what works is mandating some of those targets and saying, we would love to achieve this. And I genuinely, I think most organizations do want to achieve that. And I think Wagner alluded to it earlier. Given the civil unrest, given the social injustices we've seen, and they're just made so much more visible because of social media, that it's imperative we kind of resolve all of these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And this is actually very interesting what you were saying about finance and hitting targets, and how that's kind of how we're wired in a sense as finance professionals. But the thing is, and the way that I want to wrap up this discussion is by talking about the rationale behind those targets and those numbers. Oftentimes when people talk about diversity, especially in the business industry, it's very much about opportunity. We value diversity because it brings something to the corporation, because it adds some more money to the bottom line in a sense. But though diversity has great economic benefits, having representation within the company is also the right thing to do for social cohesion. And so just to wrap up this discussion, how can we move forward from diversity for opportunity to actual authentic efforts for diversity and inclusion? And maybe Wagner, you can start on this question.
Yeah, I would thank you, Tanya. I think it's okay to do both. I think it's okay to highlight that diversity really helps for the bottom line. In the language of finance, we say we want to build diverse portfolios. We want to build a diversified portfolio, right? And so it turns out that to get the hunt for talent, to get the best workforce, the best talent, you want diversity of insights, you want diversity of opinions, diversity of experiences. You're more likely to get that if you have very diverse talent pool internally. It also means that you're more likely to, if the workplace is inclusive and diverse. You'd mentioned earlier, Tanya, the emphasis on authenticity, the fact that we want all of our people to bring all of themselves to work. And so, because when people feel that they can be themselves at work, they're more likely to stay. So it's one thing to get the best people, but you want to develop and you want to retain them. So if they can be themselves at work, they're more likely to stay. You're more likely to create an altogether great work culture, great environment, and that filters into the society also. So we have a lot of these initiatives, same as the ones that Jasbir mentioned. Some things we sign up to, benchmarks, whether it's gender, whether it's now there's a Black Knot initiative that we sign up to. So those things are great. But it's not just about it makes good business sense. But beyond that, if you have a global organization with offices in multiple places, jurisdictions, investing in multiple jurisdictions, and you want to be investing locally, you need the expertise to be deep, but you need local talent also, because they understand what the nuances of those markets are. So I think the bottom line is important. I think we should continue to highlight that. Studies have shown that more diverse boards that have sort of better gender diversity actually perform better. Let's not shy away from that. Let's highlight that. But then let's add on top of that and say, what kind of society do we want to build? And for organizations such as mine, CPP Investments, we do want to be a steward for the society also. So we owe it to that mandate that we want to do right. We want to lead by example, have a more inclusive, diverse workforce, and then that would filter through. And the point on being holistic there, I think one thing that I think has been a problem with a lot of this inclusion diversity topic is I call it the collective misery. We have all of these little silos of segments, and so it's it's LGBTQ, it's gender, it's Latinx, it's BIPOC, but what ends up happening is we need to all work together, because if we silo ourselves and just break it off, we're going to end up competing for. This segment will end up competing for attention. It's the reality is organizations may not be able to do all of them at once, so there needs to be a hierarchy. But those segments need to work together, because only by working together and carrying each other along can we all tick all the boxes of inclusiveness and diversity, or inclusion and diversity. And I agree with Jasbir. We like targets. I like benchmarks. I think they're great. I think if we have a broad umbrella, we'll never move the needle. But if we can break it down and say, okay, hang on, we tell ourselves that we're doing great on inclusion and diversity. That's good. But can we measure these little subgroups? How many of our, senior leaders are, represented? How many of senior leaders are Black? Or how many of senior leaders are female? How many of the senior leaders are, LGBTQ? Let's just measure that, and let's crack it, and then let's drill down and see, are we really doing as well as we think we're doing? So, my message is we should all work together. All the segments should work together, absolutely. But we should also measure all the subcomponents, because that way we cannot hide on a broad umbrella. So that's all I have. Thank you, Fanny.
Of course. And what about you, Linda?
Yeah, maybe I really agree with what Wagner. I think you did bring it really in very clear way. I would add, maybe with all those quotas about diversity, and we promote diversity, sometimes we are victim of that. We are victim of what we call the positive discrimination. And we find ourselves in like I hear sometimes comments about, being a woman and an immigrant, it would help you, like being a partner, like it's and I hear it about other people, like, that woman, she got a position in a board in board committee because they did need a woman, and like it's really so frustrating. Like it did really, like we feel the imposter syndrome. Do we really, like, it's because of our hard work, or they needed a face to add? And we know it, like we know that we did work really hard, and it was actually the opposite. It was not easy because of that, and not the other way. So it's I think we need those quotas. They need to be statistics that show that there is a progress, but we need to move from diversity to really talk about inclusion. If we keep like pointing that we are different, there is still a problem. Like we are here, we are working, we are doing the same work. Why we should even talk about it? Like that's the real problem. And how, like Jasbir and Wagner said, how to be authentic, how we can bring the whole ourselves to work. I did feel sometimes that I don't, I need to keep it quiet about the fact that I'm from Morocco, or speak about Morocco, or speak about that I didn't get that much sleep because my baby was crying the last night, because like the others, it's not the same reality, and I don't need to bring those problems on the table and be loud about it. So just like hide it. So, but so now, like need to be authentic and really be ourselves at work and promote authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it's necessary to pave the way for more people to continue being a little bit more authentic. And hopefully, as you said, at one point we'll get to, a stage where we don't point out each other's differences anymore, but rather can kind of just relate to each other's humanities a bit more. Jasbir, do you have any other comments to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think just to the final point around inclusion, I think it's extremely valuable. And I think that, like my fellow panelists, I think, creating an environment, whether it's at work or in your personal life or with your friends, that it's inclusive, it's a conscious effort. So I think Wagner talked about, the collective misery, and, just to expand on that, I think we also have a collective conscience to kind of create that fair and just and inclusive society. And it's a mindful act that, every single day that you go out there and it's intentional. So, and I think it's a firm belief at Lombard Odier. It's part of our embedded methodology. We've just launched this new this is a bit of a plug, but we just not launched the our click methodology, which is creating an environment and community and world which is circular, lean, inclusive and clean. And what I'm really proud of is the fact that we included inclusive in there, because that is all about creating fair and just societies. And I think that's what this discussion has been about. And and I think that is to move from collective misery to a collective conscience and responsibility. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. You've provided very, very valuable insight. We have a few questions right now on the chat. So if that's okay, I'll just ask a couple of them. All right. So we have a question here. Is it always a must to have a finance major in the MBA to get started in finance-related professions, like, for example, investment banker, financial analyst, and so on? Or do other majors such as marketing, innovation, and operations management do as well? Maybe Jasbir, since you've been quite involved in recruiting, you can take that question.
Yeah, the one thing that I always say to any graduates on our graduate program, right through to professional hires, is, follow your passions. Enjoy what you do, love what you do. We have recruited people from history, English, marketing, you name it, we have them within the firm. So I think when you're very early on, you get caught up in this, I need to have this and this and this. Actually, it's not true. And my approach, and I think a lot of senior people's approaches, we can give you the technical skills. We can teach that to you. What we can't teach you is to be passionate. That DNA, if you bring that, perfect.
Absolutely. We have another question here that I think is very interesting. Any suggestions on how we can bring the issue of lack of diversity to our seniors and executives? I think that's something that all of you have touched on briefly. Maybe we can start with you, Linda.
So can you please just repeat the question?
Yes, of course. So how can you bring the issue of lack of diversity and inclusion to your senior leaders? How do you go about having these conversations?
Okay, so I think at KPMG there is a lot of conscience about that, and it's something that KPMG is working a lot on it. We have committees around the diversity, around for women, and we've been awarded as a diversity employer award for the last 13 years. So it's easy to talk about those matters. But I did experience in other places before that it was not, when you don't have all that structure, sometimes it's more difficult. So there are like friendly or less friendly places, and you will. We had a discussion with Jasbir this week, and you said Jasbir, and I did really it's really good to say that you will make more impact in places that are less friendly, for sure. And in places where it's friendly, be engaged. Go to those committees. Work, make yourself an active member, and also outside outside your workplace, also in some associations.
Absolutely. What about you, Wagner? What do you think? Have you ever had those conversations? And if so, how did you go about them?
I think so. CPP Investments, we're really lucky. We have a designated inclusion and diversity person who's doing a great job. We have multiple employee resource groups that people can lean on, and all of those groups have leadership. But we've one for cultural diversity, one for just women issues. We've one for the I think I mentioned LGBTQ plus, and so we have all these employee resource group, one for mental health awareness, and a fifth one for environmental friendly issues. So I would start with first, if needed, the inclusion diversity person, if that exists. If there are employee resource groups, which is what people have already mentioned, lean on them. And also just internal mentors and sponsors. If you have some internal, whether it's a mentor, it's a sponsor, you can lean on them. And even just allies. Allies could be, they may not be formalized, but just lean on them. Share your experiences with them. Because really by telling your stories to them, they can actually start seeing the world through some things they may not be able to, they may not be aware of, and then they may action it and push it forward and help bring about that change. So just the risk of repeating what's been said earlier, just engage and explore. And if those things don't exist, there's no shame in pounding the door and creating them. Right. So if they don't exist at all, how about you talk to HR and sound them out? Is there scope to launch an employee resource group for that? Especially if it's, what I would just caution on is it's better to come with a solution as well as the problem. Like don't say this, nothing works, it's just not, how about you think about it and come up with possible things? Is it talent pipeline solution? Do you want to get more involved with campus recruitment to hopefully help just formalize what the solution could be, and then pitch it to them if those resources don't exist in Canada. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Jasbir, any thoughts on that? Anything you want to add?
I think Linda and Wagner covered it. The only thing that these conversations are extremely difficult. I think probably all three of us have been in similar conversations with EXCO members where we've had to do it. These conversations do not stop. Whether you're junior in the organization, whether you're senior in the organization, the level of discomfort does not decrease over time. So it's always uncomfortable. And I think you just have to take a deep breath and brace yourself and go and have the conversation. And I think we all, like I said, we all have a collective responsibility to bring about change. And if that's what you want to see in your organization, then you have to be prepared to have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, these conversations are never easy, but they're very necessary. And if you really think that you're able to kind of move the needle, and you always have the power to, so just go for it. As Wagner said, if you come with a problem, make sure you also come with a solution. I think that this was a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for being here today. We're on time now. We don't have time to take any more questions, but thank you for everyone who participated. You have been amazing today, and I've learned so much, and I'm sure participants have as well. So thank you again for being a part of this panel. And on that note, thank you all for attending the panel, and we will see you in the next speaker series that we have on Monday.
Thank you, Tanya. You did a great job for moderating.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.